Samantha was the first of a handful of children to be born shortly after the Ark was sealed. Her birth being the first of this new, post-flood generation, in addition to the first child of their leader, Samantha was held in the highest of esteems. Though much attention was bestowed upon the child, Samantha quickly began to earn their admiration as she grew. As a child she was always happy, smiling, radiating God's goodness in her every moment. As she matured from child to adult, her words always sincere and honest, her actions kind and full of love. This child, the spawn of their Savior from the flood, the first example of how the new world would be, lived up to all those expectations and more. How every thought and action a billboard displaying just how good humanity can be. Her motives, honest and pure, contrasted against the selfish, lazy, heathen world this community left behind. She shone like a beacon, like a lighthouse, a lone source of light in a dark and tumultuous sea. The Ark's original inhabitants looking to this child when their faith would waver, only to be reminded of all God's goodness with just her smile, her eyes bright and full of hope, her words honest and touching, her actions pure. She was the living embodiment of all this group was trying to preserve, hoping to one day return to the earth, to restore to all of humanity. Samantha was a bright girl, quickly soaking up all of Evan's lectures. She was always the one Evan turned to, when asking the ever-growing class of Ark-born children any hypothetical, or hoping to get any of their takes on what he was trying to convey. Not only was Samantha quick to absorb any content, she could easily see her opponent's point of view. Her depth of empathy could fill the vastest ocean. She was kind and sympathetic to any views that opposed her, able to see her opponent's point while still conveying hers without condemnation or ridicule. She truly was a gift from God, a template for all the others to follow, a physical embodiment of what humanity was originally meant to be before being tainted by baser animal instincts and desires. Before the fall, she was what purity looked like, devoid of deceit or manipulation, free from self-interest or bigotry, a soul open only to giving and receiving God's love. She was the vessel brimming full of divine light, a chalice overflowing with ambrosia. From the moment of her birth, the moment Burke knew he had a daughter, the new father started looking for her future husband. Liz and Kate were both pregnant at the same time, but when Liz gave birth to Desiree, her daughter, just days after Kate's labors, it was clear Burke would have to wait to find his future son-in-law. Burke didn't need to wait too long. Jess was pregnant in addition to both Liz and Kate, if not a few months behind them, and when her son Philip was born, all just assumed he would fit the bill. All but Samantha, that is. The entire community took it as a foregone conclusion that the two would one day wed, but Samantha just never felt the spark. Kind and empathetic as she was, Samantha never rejected Philip as much as she more gave off the impression she was just focused on her studies, focused on knowing and being close to God. But Samantha had no intention of marrying Philip. She knew she would never bear Philip's child. He just never moved her. She often worried that no man would. She worried her limited pool of suitors was just too shallow for her to dive into. As Samantha approached womanhood, knowing with her first cycle would come all the expectations to silence future monthly expulsions with her husband's seed, and Samantha saw no husband on the horizon to fill that role. She accepted her fate to carry on her family's bloodline but worried she would never love the man, that it would be more a duty than an honor, but she trusted God and His infinite wisdom. Samantha was confident God had a plan for her. She would spend each empty waking moment trying to clear her mind, to hear God if He was to speak to her, to fill her in on the divine plan, to know what God, not her father or anyone else inside the Ark, wanted for her. Samantha trusted heart and soul that He would show her the true path, regardless of how hard anyone else tried to redirect her. Evan being the only voice she would give credence to other than the divine. From Samantha's earliest memories forward, Evan was always enlightening her, always had the answer, his words clear and concise. As empathetic as she was, Samantha never could truly understand how others in her class might not get what Evan was explaining. She could feel what her classmates were feeling. Shame, confusion, doubt, disbelief, but never truly understanding why. For Samantha, Evan's words were just as clear and indestructible as the world's finest diamond. Maybe it wasn't love, but she felt something for Evan she never felt for anyone else. Okay, finish putting away all your materials. I see Liz approaching now. Once you put back whatever you took out, you can head over to the meadow. Evan trying to minimize some of the chaos the class could leave behind before heading to their duties tending to the herd. Most of the kids knew they could just leave whatever books or magazines they were using because Evan could never leave them out. Not a chore, but a labor of love, tending to his carefully curated collection. "Can I ask you a question?" Samantha asked him softly, as if the words snuck out without her knowing. Eva the eager helper assisting Evan with picking up the stray books. Their previous readers having already disappeared, as if raptured from responsibility. "You know I live for your questions. Fire away." Evan's attention trained on Samantha and her query as his eyes and hands scanned reshelving books. "Before the arc, did you ever—" Samantha's youth prominent when she would get nervous, and when she was nervous she became shy, timid, and in Evan's eyes, adorable. "What's on your mind, Pumpkin?" Any reservation, hesitation, or reluctance vanished whenever he would call her Pumpkin. A dissyllabic magic spell, transforming reality into fantasy. Her ears the only ones to ever hear it uttered, for Evan only said it when they were truly alone. For she was Samantha. First of God's chosen children when she was in the ark. But Pumpkin was a soul free from any bonds to honor, faith, or duty. Samantha was destined to bear many of God's new children. She was to be a shining beacon for all future generations of humanity, but Pumpkin, she was the soul of a being free to only learn, question, and ponder. "Before you committed to the ark, did you ever think about having children?" Where Samantha was afraid to ask her mentor a personal, probing question, Pumpkin had no such qualms, quenched in his presence. "I was always married to my work, my true love," Evan smiling softly, fondly remembering a pre-arc existence. "But yeah, I kinda always figure I would have at least one kid, someday. The latter half, born with less jovial, optimistic fervor. A silent sadness deep in those emerald eyes. Eyes so foreign to Samantha and all those inside the ark. Evan, their lone progenitor. So, have you just resigned to your fate?" "Well," a bright smile returning to his face, "it's not like I really have any options left." A sardonic chuckle capping the sentiment. "The only 4 mature women left, all clearly spoken for. Was there ever anything between you and Deb, or was she just into Dean from day one?" The young girl's gaze far from the innocent pixie that started this line of questioning. Evan's standard focused facade shattered with a nervous laugh, never expecting anyone, let alone this young student of his, to ask. This the first question he didn't jump to answer. It was complicated. By far the shortest answer Evan has ever given to any question, even simple true-false. Not according to how my mum tells it. The gossip girl digging for more dirt. "Is that so?" Evan laughing it off. Back-to-back 3-word answers for you scoring at home. And don't think Samantha didn't notice. For once she had Evan stumbling for words, fumbling for an answer, and boy was it a rush. A girl could get used to that feeling. "The way my mum tells it." Samantha putting away the last of the stray books, turning to face Evan, hoping to make eye contact with him, but suddenly he was the evasive and coy one, not the same man that called her Pumpkin. "My mum was shocked that you and Deb didn't hit it off." Her smile soft, kind, pushing the shy introvert back into Evan's deepest recesses again. "My mum prides herself on being a divine matchmaker." Evan letting out a semi-pretentious chuckle that only the Evan Samantha knew owned. Glad her friend had returned, she matched his laugh, louder and with more full-body merriment. Those are her words, not mine. The two sharing a well-earned laugh at something so clearly Kate would say. The merriment cut short as Evan turned away from Samantha and drifted over to a small box on a shelf perched on the far wall. Samantha so lost in her laughter not to notice till Evan had reached the shelf, pulling down an old shoebox. "When I was little," Evan stuttered soft, his back still turned to Samantha as he held the shoebox in his hand, feeling the weight of it, looking at it, letting its memory fill his mind. "I had real issues, fitting in with other kids. I barely spoke. I would retreat within myself and just observe the world, like watching a movie. Unable to interact with what was unfolding on the screen in front of me while taking in every detail of the interactions. My parents were worried there was something physically wrong with me, but many a doctor reassured them it wasn't anything physical. My father wanted to help me and, well, he loved baseball, so he figured baseball would fix me as well. He took me to a game, explained the rules, and handed me a scorebook. He taught me how to score a game, to turn everything that could happen on that field into a series of notations, a structure to define what I was seeing, a means to relay that so anyone else that saw my scorebook would know exactly what happened on that field that day. Evan pausing to open the lid of the shoebox in his hands, finding what he was looking for before putting the box onto a table and taking a few steps towards Samantha, showing her what was inside. When I got home that night, my mum made me tell my two cousins about the game. Normally I would be shy, fear holding my tongue, unable to turn what was in my head into words, but now, with this, Evan handing Samantha the faded, worn scorecard from that first game, I could tell them exactly what happened. And they were fixated on me, hanging on my every word, like the game was happening in our living room. Samantha looking at the yellowed, fading relic, picturing that scared boy finally able to embrace, understand, be a part of the world around him, becoming the Evan she knew. I found my voice, and my voice made me strong, confident. That scared, overwhelmed little boy, a thing of my past, I had outgrown him, or at least I thought I had. His voice dropping as Samantha handed him back the relic from his childhood, Evan silent as he put it back into the shoebox back onto its shelf. After speaking with your father, being told that God had chosen me, needed me, and would be providing me with my soulmate to assist me, while I was at my apex, I felt invincible, ready to do whatever God asked of me. That was till I saw the way Deb looked at Dean, right through me. From her first glance of him, I was invisible, that scared little boy again, watching the game while the other kids all got to play. His admission heavy, a weight he bore for years, watching, teaching all the children, a child that he thought would be his. Samantha could feel the ache in Evan's gaze each time he saw Kelly, noting how he never once met Kelly's gaze, or at least never in her presence. She could feel the hole that was left by her existence, her being, a promise that was supposed to be his. His eyes, his mind, half him, but instead, she was half Dean. Evan was too wrapped up in his pity party of one, all joy driven out of him, focus trained on his missing piece, the piece he should be teaching, raising each day, picturing his own eyes, looking back at him as he lectured in the observatory, to notice Samantha putting a slide onto the light table before killing the lights. The darkness pulling Evan back to reality. I love this one. Samantha threw it out casually as she killed the overhead lights, letting the projector come to life, the image enveloping the smooth stone ceiling above, patting the spot next to her on the overstuffed cushion on the floor. What is this one called again? Samantha asked absent-mindedly, not out of ignorance or curiosity, but because Evan wouldn't be able to resist answering. Orion the Hunter, Evan replied as he found a soft spot on the cushioned floor next to his young student and friend. Right, and why was he so special again? Evan could see through her play, acting dumb on his behalf, a good friend trying to soothe him after sharing such a raw emotional memory, and loved her for it. Orion was the greatest of all mortal hunters. He would boast how there was no animal he could not kill. Evan back into full lecture mode. Any traces of the shy boy unable to convey his thoughts quickly dissolving as he told one of his favorite tales. He must have been lonely, out in the forest all alone. Our words sad, thick with the emptiness that would accompany a lone hunter. Cut off from all others. He wasn't, not at first. He loved to hunt and best any beast. That was all that mattered to him till his boasting got the better of him. Orion's arrogance didn't go unnoticed by Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and she felt compelled to put this mortal in his place, only for them to fall madly in love. When they finally met, his words slower than normal, no longer directed at the stars projected onto the ceiling, but to the beautiful young woman laying next to him in the darkness. But they end up together, right? Which one is Artemis? I bet it's one of the ones right by him, right? Samantha already knew how this story ended, her question more an attempt for her teacher to see just how alone the hero ended up, and the tragedy that he did. No, Orion was a mere mortal, and Artemis was the embodiment of chastity, not to mention her father Zeus, king of all these gods, would never allow his daughter, his prized jewel, to sully herself with a man, no matter how great he was at his craft. The two facing each other, nearly touching in the darkness, Evan could feel Samantha's affectionate gaze burning through him, knowing she didn't pick that constellation randomly. She knew this story too well. This was no innocent question. Evan was sharp enough to see through the ruse, to make the connection. The lonely man putting his duty before desire, the goddess chaste and pure, not wanting to disappoint her father. The two bound by obligation to the greater good, pushing them apart only to give way to the gravity, pulling them together. Evan opening his mouth ready to impart some wisdom, to explain to the young woman why the two could never be lovers, parting his lips to utter them. The words never making it out, snuffed out, extinguished as Samantha pressed her lips against his.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again for the latest installment in Ezra's tale.
Wow, I might need a moment. Got a bit steamy at the end there.
Easy, sis. That is my grandmother you're talking about.
Sorry, brother. I just got wrapped up in the retelling.
Speaking of which, why don't you fill in our listeners on those details? Feel free to skip over the juicier bits. Again, those are my grandparents.
We get our first encounter with the original of the Ark-born children, Samantha, born to both our founder, Burke, and his wife Kate, in September of 2000.
I was worried that Ezra might get a bit hyperbolic with his retelling of Samantha's finer points, but he seemed to capture her radiance quite eloquently.
Truly a remarkable woman. Really loved the glimpse into young Evan as well. Having only known him later in his life, I never would have pegged him as one struggling for words.
Quite a match, those two. Both seeming so composed and confident. Nice to see them sharing in their vulnerability, overcoming a similar obstacle before them.
I've heard that story 1,000 times, and it gets me every time. They couldn't have been the only couple to have a secret rendezvous in the darkness of the observatory.
And I think we will just leave it at that. Make sure to join us again next week, for we will have a very special guest handling the herald duties. So make sure you like and subscribe. You won't want to miss it.